take part in the game.
Well, he said his grandfather, her grandfather, was at Appomattox.
Oh, okay. Then he's with the police department.
When Lee surrendered to Grant. So,
okay, so he's with the 9th, 2nd Division of the 20th Department. So picking up on fire. Yeah. So I have a physical register.
Like I run them here, try to get over here.
It's the 23rd.
Before they go crazy time. Yeah, I can do that, but we're gonna walk all night.
we're different descendants, but they all understand that his grandfather.
Yeah, when I leave.
The son of this guy that I grew up with him. I mean, I grew up knowing he was old, but I grew up knowing the son of this guy.
Picking up Tri-Bike, one of New York, those Chicago bikes up.
Uncle George?
Tri-Bike.
I almost know he was back of it.
Right, yeah, that's something, right?
I found one.
Last week, because I don't have children. Even though I get 19.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, getting a relative price.
No, that's cool. That's not even ours. It's from the console from my phone.
Yeah, the track bike side.
So today is going to be Saturday, so it might be around the same time. So we're going to be controlling that area. Yeah, it's probably 10 of us also. I'm just coming back. I've been controlling. Oh, you know, that's what you're saying. Yeah. We just woke up, but we had to shut it down right after that today. Yeah, because of the AC problem. Yeah, I found out like a couple of days ago. So your picture of the if it's sports, it's going to be 2 in October. This is recent. That boy. Yeah, my oldest is a girl.
Oh, you got a boy now, 6 years old. Oh, how precious. Oh, it looks like her.
Yeah.
He looks like her.
Small.
Yeah, let me see the picture. She looks like you.
Yeah. I remember you seeing me. She said, "Mommy, Tommy, and the buddy."
She's precious. She's 2.
About to be 2 in October.
So what do you got?
Probably say probably start around 5. I got you coming down, so I can just text you.
My name, not just the one.
Hey, just checking in. So, doesn't look like any give it to.
Yeah.
It's fine. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I'm sitting right in the room. Do you definitely want something? I just don't know. Yeah.
You get the food? What did you say? You say 19? Yeah, come. You say 19 for food? Okay. Good. I'll find out. I gotta go. Yeah.
Sam, we already put the information down on the website. That's the yeah,
So, we never want to see.
What are they putting?
They
Oh my God.
They just put it, I'm thinking, it just never see it too. Hello?
Oh, so that's what it says. A lot of words, but that's what it says.
That's all it is. They just ignore it and move on. It's literally like 3 lines. No, it's not just that. It's like 8.
I put that sign in.
Oh, that's the one that says.
Right. So we're gonna have to only make a schedule sign this for our
Well,
NDC.
I guess if they manage to take the statue down in my neighborhood, you might get that one too.
That's my program.
Really?
Where the east side?
What's your address?
7.
I live at 12 and 6. I've been there for almost 40 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so you're right there. How old are you?
I'm 29. I'm 29.
You're a little young. You're younger than my kids. You probably played in Lincoln Park.
That's right.
Yes, I used to take my kids. I take my kids there almost every day.
And Garfield Park.
Garfield is more on the floor, right?
Yeah. I used to walk past.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, is that? Oh, I know.
Hang out.
Very much.
Sure.
Very much.
Yeah, well, you know,
I'm in the hospital right now.
You're where? You're working in the hospital?
I'm primarily a medical
take
doctor.
Oh, is that right? Oh my goodness. Wow.
police decide you want to check their house. You don't want to get the place like that. You don't want to associate with the police.
Oh yeah.
So they got a call, they left. They started throwing bottles. They throwing bottles.
I wear an actual N95 mask.
We had to knock bottles and we got around. We said, is there another way out?
Yeah.
They showed us how to somebody showed us how to get out of it.
Yeah. That's the.
Yeah, someone guard out here. Like 4 blocks from my house.
Oh wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you based on details, yeah?
I'm in Southeast.
Oh, Southeast, okay.
Like the real South.
Oh, is that right? Oh, you lucky
Two
man.
sides.
There's 2 sides, you like that side better?
Very playing basketball.
You like Southeast, so you
Oh
like
yeah.
that, right?
You look at like plastic.
How many? Well, just 10, that's just where it's about moving stuff around and doing stuff.
I don't know, they came over there for some reason to play basketball.
Yeah.
And so you see Jesse Jackson and Mary play basketball.
Oh,
And behind them is Chuck Brown.
Oh wow.
I live now too.
In the God playing basketball.
He wasn't playing, he was
I
just
can't
there.
Oh.
just
Right here,
so,
he was in the shop.
a little bit further away from there.
Amazing.
All the fun stuff.
Hey guys, we're gonna start right now. You guys wanna take a sit? Yeah, but she'll come right to you and then we'll walk.
Hello?
I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C. I'm joined this evening by members of my public safety team. The Chief of Police, Peter Newsham, will address you momentarily. As you know, it has been a violent week in our community, and today we will provide an update on investigations into recent homicide cases that we spoke about on Monday. One of those announcements is that we have made an arrest in the killing of Davon McNeil. I know I speak for the entire community when I say that we are heartbroken and outraged by Davon's murder. It is just the worst thing that can happen in the community for a child to lose his life to violence. And as mayor, there is no part of this job that is more difficult than seeing a family who has lost a child. The chief will tell you more about this one arrest that has been made in the case, but I also want to ask you for your help. There are still 3 suspects related to the shooting that killed Davon, that we're asking for the community's assistance in finding these suspects. The names of the 3 suspects we're looking for are Christian Wingfield, Marcel Lamont Gordon, and Carlo General. So our plea is that if you have information that will lead us to the whereabouts of these individuals, that you call us immediately. I want to remind the community that there is a $25,000 reward for information that leads to an arrest and conviction. But we know that this is about more than a reward. This is also about sending the clear message to everyone in our community that we will not tolerate this violence. Davon should be with his family today. He should be doing all of the things that little boys do during the summertime in our city. So if you have any information about the 3 men I just named, please contact us at 50411 or 202-727-9099. Again, to Christian, Marcel, and Carlo, turn yourselves in. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. I'm Pete Newsham. I'm the Chief of Police for the Metropolitan Police Department. As you all know, on Saturday, July 4th, a little after 9:20 p.m., officers from the 7th District were in the 1400 block of Cedar Street Southeast. They were flagged down by a citizen in reference to a shooting. When the officers got on the scene, they located a victim, later identified as 11-year-old Davon McNeil, outside his family home, suffering from a gunshot wound. First responders attempted to save the little boy's life, but unfortunately he was pronounced dead when he arrived at a local hospital. During the investigation, we learned that Davon was attending a peace event with family members in the area of his home. Moments before the shooting, Davon had headed towards his family home to retrieve an item for a family member. As Davon made his way down his walkway towards his doorway, 5 armed suspects appeared in the immediate vicinity and gunfire erupted. As a result of that gunfire, our community lost an 11-year-old beautiful little boy. Working tirelessly on this case, MPD homicide detectives, including Detective Anthony Green and Detective Gus Goncoulias, were able to secure 4 arrest warrants for Davon's murderers. Today, pursuant to a D.C. Superior Court arrest warrant, the Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force located 18-year-old Darrell Bond of Southeast Washington, D.C. in the 3800 block of Southern Avenue Southeast, and they took him into custody without incident. Mr. Bond was transported to the homicide branch where he's being charged with first-degree murder while armed for his role in the shooting death of Davon. Mr. Bond has a prior violent criminal history. As the mayor mentioned, the 3 additional suspects wanted in this case, and we will provide photographs, are 25-year-old Marcel Gordon of Southeast Washington, D.C., 19-year-old Carlo General of Southeast Washington, D.C., and 22-year-old Christian Wingfield of Hillcrest Heights, Maryland. Not surprisingly, all three of these suspects had gun-related criminal history. Mr. Gordon had 2 prior gun arrests as well as multiple other charges. Mr. General is currently under Maryland supervised probation out of Temple Hills, Maryland. Mr. General has multiple arrests and is a convicted felon. He was arrested this past spring and charged as a felon in possession of a firearm. After his arrest, he was released back into the community pending the felon in possession charge. Mr. Wingfield is currently under active intensive CSOSA supervision and was on pre-trial high-intensity supervision with a curfew and on GPS monitoring at the time of Davon's murder. Mr. Wingfield has multiple arrests and is a past convicted felon. He was arrested this past spring and charged as a felon in possession of a firearm. He was released back into our community while this felon in possession charge is pending. We're asking for the public's assistance in locating these 3 at-large individuals to help bring a sense of closure to Davon's family, including his grandfather, John, who stands behind me today. These suspects should be considered armed and dangerous. As the mayor said, if you have information about their whereabouts, please call the Metropolitan Police Department on 202-727-9099, or you can text us at 50411. You can do this anonymously. Detectives are working on securing an arrest warrant for a 5th suspect in this case, and we hope that will be accomplished in the coming days. I'd like to also make you aware of another arrest that we made overnight. On Saturday, July 4th, at about almost 11 p.m., members of the 1st District responded to the McDonald's in the 1500 block of Pennsylvania Avenue in Ward 6 of Washington, D.C. When they arrived, they located an adult male suffering from a gunshot wound. D.C. Fire and Emergency Medical Services responded to the scene. They transported the victim to a local hospital. Unfortunately, life-saving efforts failed and the victim was pronounced dead. The decedent was identified as 36-year-old Antonio Gardner of Oxon Hill, Maryland. This violent attack on Mr. Gardner was captured on the surveillance camera inside the McDonald's, and this was critical in identifying 2 suspects. On Wednesday, July 8th, pursuant to a D.C. Superior Court custody order, a 14-year-old juvenile male of Southeast D.C. was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. We continue to search for an additional suspect in this case, and his photograph will be made available to you today. This individual that we're looking for is believed to be connected to the Potomac Gardens area of our city. Again, if you have any information, you can call us or text us. You can do that anonymously. And as a reminder, in homicide cases, we offer up to a $25,000 reward for information on arrest and conviction of these suspects. Again, I want to extend my condolences to the McNeil and Gardner families who have tragically and unnecessarily lost their loved ones. A young man who stopped at McDonald's for a bite to eat, and a boy who was attending a peace event with his family and with his community. The only word that comes to mind regarding these 2 homicides is senseless. We can take any questions that you all might have.
Chief,
Yes.
was it a shootout? I'm trying to figure out what was going on there. Was he hit in cross? What are your, at this point, what are your thoughts?
There's a multiple-page affidavit that will be available through the courts. I can tell you that 5 known offenders that probably shouldn't have been into our community were back in our community. They had a history of picking up firearms and using them in our community. We're out there. They did it again, as we have warned, that there needs to be consequences for firearms, illegal gun violations, and violent crime in our city. And now these guys have taken the life of an 11-year-old boy, and that is tragic. Yes?
Chief, were they targeting someone specific? Do you know that yet?
It does not appear that Dave Vaughn was the intended target in this case. I did want to make that clear. The little boy was not a target. It appears that the suspects in this case were shooting at something else.
And also in regards to Mr. Wingfield, how is it possible that somebody who is being monitored by the court and on a GPS monitor is able to go out and commit a murder, as you said?
You know, that's a good question. That's a question I think we need to all wrap our heads around. We know that he cut off his GPS bracelet shortly after the homicide was committed. As the mayor said, if these guys had any sense of civility, they would turn themselves in. It doesn't look like Mr. Wingfield has any intention of doing that. We also have information that Mr. Wingfield may have tried to change his identity.
And Chief, is this anywhere related in terms of the suspects into connection to the shooting that happened last Monday, that cul-de-sac where we saw that video?
Yep, that's an ongoing part of this investigation that we will continue to see if that ties in. There is a possibility that these folks that spend a lot of time up in that area were involved in a prior shooting. So that's part of our ongoing investigation.
And what do you think contributed to this quick arrest? Was it help with the community? Was it mostly the investigators?
It's a combination of things. I think one of the things that I would point to is the fact that the apartment complex up there had a very good video system. We also did receive a lot of help, a lot of tips from the public, and good old-fashioned detective work. So it was really a combination of things that brought this to a quick closure. I wish all of our homicides would close this quickly.
Chief, and if the mayor wants to weigh in on this as well, it appears in Mr. Wingfield's case that his defense attorney's motion for him to be released because of coronavirus. How do you react to the fact that, obviously in this case, somebody was let out who police are saying it was clearly a risk to the community?
I've been very clear on my position. Of course, I'll let the mayor weigh in on the coronavirus piece, that we need to separate gun offenders and violent offenders from our community, because if we don't, things like this are going to continue to happen. And the fact that we had two guys that were arrested that had previously been convicted, had subsequently gone out and picked up an illegal firearm in our community and were back out on the streets is very troubling and scary to me.
Weigh in on our experience with detention and
currently, the D.C. jail has 0 positive cases of COVID-19. I want to stress that the jail's come a long way since the early part of this pandemic, and for COVID to be used as a reason to let someone violent out back on the street is just it's a request not based in fact, and I hope the request does not get accepted.
Yes.
Chief, you can just clarify, you say Devon was not the target, but was anybody in his family known to the suspects or to the alleged shooter?
Was anyone in his family?
Somebody else, or was it just this?
It doesn't appear like it was related to the family at all at this time. So what it was is you had indiscriminate gunfire in our community on the 4th of July. There was a lot of fireworks going on at the time. A lot of people that were up there, a lot of witnesses that we talked to were having a hard time even deciphering between what was fireworks and what was gunfire. But at the end of the day, what you had is you had 5 repeat violent offenders that decided it was okay to shoot off guns in the 1400 block of Cedar Street. And now we have a family, a grandfather standing behind me who lost an 11-year-old child, and that just can't happen. We got to wrap our minds around what we can do to prevent that from happening in the future.
May we ask the grandfather just his response? You'd like to address just how you're feeling right now, sir?
Right now, I am with joy. The police did a great job. The mayor did a good job, and I definitely have to say the community did a good job. I mean, I heard from them every single day through social media. They came out and walked with me every night for about 3 hours. So everybody participated in trying to close this case. So I just want to say I am feeling a lot of joy on that part. But of course, I'm sad because I lost my grandson. Thanks for asking.
Thanks, sir.
John, what would you say to the judges that have let these offenders out when they've done numerous gun crimes?
Well, I think that's something the judges have to start thinking about, because this is not the first case where people was let out because of the, corona and other incidents. And these people that came out have committed crimes. So I believe the judges have to think about what they're doing, because one day this may hit their front door. And if it hits their front door, they will understand how the rest of us feel when these guys are let out and they kill members of our family.
I guess I was just wondering if Chief or Mayor, you might know this, whether the current pending budget cuts that the council passed that would affect the police department, would any of those directly impact the homicide division, which obviously has played a tremendous role in closing these two cases?
Well, I think the fact that you even have to ask that question suggests that we probably landed in the wrong place when we talk about investments in public safety. We rely on our police department for patrols. We rely on our police department to solve crimes and to bring people to justice. And that is their role. It's certainly not our only investment in public safety. We invest in violence interruption. We invest in behavioral health specialists being out in the communities. We've invested in trauma centers and family support centers that will be throughout all 8 wards of the District of Columbia. What the council did, they said it was their mission, it was their intent to reduce the ranks of MPD. They did not, however, reduce the work of MPD. And we want the public to know to continue to call on MPD when needed, and we will manage to get all of the resources you need. But it may mean that we have to come back to the council and tell them to fix it. Because as mayor, what I cannot allow is for the chief or any of the commanders and the lieutenants, the investigators, not to have the people that they need to man the shifts, to answer the calls, and to help make the district safer. So we have to continue to focus on our needs and letting them know what our needs are. And Chief, you can Chief or Kevin talk about how we think that a reduction in 200 people by the end of the fiscal year affects homicide.
So it's one of the things, I have a responsibility as your chief of police to develop a strategic plan. And when you lose that many officers, you lose between 200 and 300 police officers, it has a potential for impacting every part of the agency. We're thinking through that now. This shrinkage of the force will begin starting on October 1st. And so we're going to have to develop a strategic plan, like the mayor said, to ensure that this city is safe. And we will do that. You know, we were going to suffer a little bit of a hit because of COVID-19, and that's not unlike a lot of other agencies in the city. And we would have been able to do the best we can with what we had under those circumstances, and we will do the same here.
The topic of the council, Councilman Grasso putting out a letter calling for you to step down. What do you think about that?
Can I have one response to that? Just quickly.
Thank you.
The mayor, not too often that I will speak ahead of the mayor, but in this case, because it's personal, I will say this, that council member Grasso has often said that he wants to work collaboratively to move this city forward. But when you see a letter like that, I guess his idea of collaboration is he only wants to collaborate with people who think like him. And apparently, I don't think enough like him, so he says I need to be fired. I think there's a guy at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue who acts the same way. It's either my way or the highway. So those are my initial thoughts on the letter that the council member wrote.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do you have a response on that, Mayor?
I would just say this, and I think that the chief is absolutely right. But I know that Councilmember Grasso and I have worked together on a lot of different issues, especially in the education realm. And my great hope for him is that, and he's leaving the council, he has a few more months, and I wouldn't want to see him use this lame duck period to make the district less safe. So I hope that he focuses in his remaining months on the council on how to make the city safer and deliver education for our kids. Any other? Yes.
In regards to the funding, you mentioned information about a reduction of officers potentially making the city less safe. Do you have any proof that more officers necessarily impacts crime and makes crime go down?
Well, we know when we were at this level of force strength, it was last in the 1990s, the end of the 1990s. And I don't think anybody wants to go back to those days in the District of Columbia.
In the 90s.
I'm sorry?
Crime is way lower now than it was in the 90s.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you.